Of Calendars and the Mayans. One law there is in the world of ours, which all nations and all people, no matter how far apart or how unknown to one another, have always recognized and respected. That is the eternal law and order of the universe, written where all may read it in the skies. From every spot on earth where they have lived, people have looked up in awe and wonder to watch the sun, moon, and planets travel their unchanging pathway through the heavens. They have noted how the seasons followed in their regular orders: seed time, summer, harvest time, and winter, and have regulated their lives accordingly. And as they advanced beyond the state of savages, all people have tried, as best they could, to divide time according to the moon and sun, and mark off seasons in what we call a calendar. This they have done with varying degrees of success, correcting their mistakes if possible, or starting all over again if their first attempt proved too faulty to be of any use. The Roman calendar, established by Julius Caesar and based upon the Egyptian model, was as good as any could be found in the Roman Empire, but it still did not work to perfection. In the year which we call 8 BC, Augustus, who was the Pontifex Maximus, or high priest in charge of announcing the holy days, discovered that the year was beginning 3 days too late. Up to that time, to make it right, an extra day had been added every 4 years in February. So now he suspended having any more leap years until the calendar year got in step with the sun again. At that time, as long as they were making changes, the Senate proposed changing the name of September, the emperor's birth month, and renaming it in his honor. Augustus was gratified but preferred the previous month, Sextilis. In that month, he said, the greatest good luck had always seemed to come to him. So accepting his choice, the Senate passed this resolution. Whereas the Emperor Augustus Caesar, in the month of Sextilis, was first made consul, and 3 times entering the city in triumph, and in the same month brought Egypt under the rule of Rome, and put an end to civil war, and whereas for this reason the said month has always been more fortunate to this empire, it is hereby decreed by the Senate that said month shall be called Augustus. So it was that Sextilis became August in honor of Augustus Caesar. At the previous month had become July in honor of Julius Caesar. But the following month was to remain September, because Tiberius Caesar was to cut short what seemed to him a silly practice, when, as emperor, a similar honor was proposed to him. There are only 12 months, he remarked dryly. What will you do when you have 13 Caesars? It is small wonder that the Romans were having trouble with their calendar. To make a calendar that works perfectly is no easy task. It takes both the knowledge of the astrologer and skill in mathematics. One difficulty lies in the fact that the number of days in a year, measured by the Earth's journey around the sun, cannot be divided evenly by the numbers of days it takes the moon moving around the earth to make a month. Even the Greeks, with all their philosophy, evolved only a confused and muddled system. And yet there was a calendar in existence. In this August of A BC, that had been running perfectly for over 600 years. On a day corresponding to August 6, 613 BC, when Rome was still a village, this calendar, it is believed, had been established, and by the people so advanced in astronomy and skilled in mathematics that it was to run for more than 2,000 years without the loss of a single day. Then in the year 1561, it was to be deliberately destroyed by the mistaken Spanish conquerors who would declare it a work of the devil. For they were American Indians, these people who had made the wonderful calendar, and they were living on their unknown continent across the Atlantic Ocean. They were first civilized Americans. They called themselves Mayans. Though the Spanish conquerors who followed Columbus, knew of the Mayans, Christopher Columbus did not. On his first voyage in 1492, Columbus was to land on nearby islands where the Indians were primitive and uncivilized. But on his second voyage, if he had steered less to the south and more to the west, he might have landed on the peninsula of Yucatan, where Mayans built their many beautiful cities, the most beautiful of them all the sacred city of Chichen Itza. But even if he had happened to land in Yucatan, Columbus would not have seen these Mayan cities in their glory. They were then in ruins. The tropical jungle was beginning to cover the great pyramids like those of the Egyptians, which the Mayans had built. Wild, bright birds were flying through the deserted temples and palaces, which had been as truly beautiful in their own way as those of ancient Greece. White roads of stone, broad and smooth as those built by the Romans. Columbus, let me see, this page isn't built by Romans. Columbus but would have found overgrown with vegetation and no longer in use. Nor would Strabo have seen these cities in their prime had he been able to sail through the Pillars of Hercules and southwest across the outer ocean. For it was between these days of Augustus and the voyages of Columbus that the Mayan civilization had flourished. In this year, 8 BC, the Mayans were in Honduras and Guatemala and had not yet moved up into the peninsula of Yucatan, which was to be their final home. Yet they had a long history behind them. They had set up their calendar in 613 BC, but they had looked back to and begun to count by days, many scholars believe from a mythical date, which we would now call October 14th, 3373 BC, that if true, would leave only 2,000 years unaccounted for. Where had they been all those years between? What had happened on that date from which they started counting? Where had they come from, these Mayans, and who were they? Those are questions yet to be answered by scientists who today are still digging in those jungle-covered ruins. All we know is that they were the greatest of all the Indian people. Unlike the cruel, warlike Aztecs who were to come later, the Mayans were peaceful builders and tillers of the soil, creators and not destroyers. Otherwise, the Mayans are still a mystery, as mysterious as they are marvelous. According to one myth which the Mayans told, their ancestors had come over the ocean from the east under the leadership of a godlike hero, or hero god, Itztamana. He was the god of light and life, creator of the world, father of them all, inventor of their system of picture writing, founder of their calendar and their civilization. Sometimes they pictured him as the rising sun paddling across the water from the east in his magic skiff. Unknown ages ago, according to the myth, a strange ship had appeared on the shore of Mexico, near what is now the city of Veracruz. The same story is also told by other Indians of Mexico. The sides of the boat glistened like the scales of a serpent. In it were people of fair skin, dressed in strange clothes and wearing on their foreheads the symbol of the sacred serpent. They were known as the Chains, people of the serpent. And because they were wise, they became the teachers of the darker-skinned natives whom they found in their new home. But they had separated these fair-skinned people, some going north into Mexico to become the Toltecs, some south to become the Mayans, though later they had been united again. In that tale, a myth, or is it founded on actual history? Were the Mayans originally fair-skinned people from the east? If so, from where did they come? From the lost continent of Atlantis? Some say so, and claim that the date for which they count may be the date when their old home sank beneath the ocean. Others laugh at that idea as preposterous. There was never such a continent as Atlantis, they declare. All the people who inhabited America before the Europeans came had come from Asia thousands of years before by way of the Bering Straits, over the stepping stones of the Aleutian Islands. there still remains of great tree trunks that had been found. Some scientists believe that the two continents may once have been joined together by a forest belt of redwoods. Other scientists poo-poo both of these theories. The Mayans came from neither east nor west, they claim, but originated on the western continent, had always been there, and was truly and actually Americans. Still, the question remains unanswered. Who were these Mayans who built pyramids, wrote books, carved stones, studied the heavens, and invented a calendar as perfect as the correct Roman one which we are still using today? Who were these marvelous, mysterious Mayans?